Hi, this is Peg Kennedy-Dygas, Dean of the College of Fine Arts. I'm doing this QuickTime movie for those of you who could not come to the April 4th budget briefing and to fill you in on information. We're going to go over some background information about where we are and how we're preparing for fiscal year 15 and go over some numbers from this year's budget and then projections for fiscal 15. We want to talk through quickly some opportunities for revenue generation, talk about a few grant award and stipend programs we're rolling out, and then briefly mention some follow-up roundtables in case you want to get together with me with questions. The role of the college in RCM is as the central planning unit. So the college is really responsible to control and execute the costs or expenses with RCM. We're also responsible to create sufficient revenues in order to balance those expenses. So insofar as we need subvention, extra funding to meet our expenses, it's our responsibility to go and advocate for those. So you might think about maybe the best nonprofit arts organization you ever came across as a great model for what we need to kind of grow into, or an institution like the University of Michigan, which has been operated in this way for many, many years. In our preparation for fiscal 15, we really have done a lot of thinking about our context. The effect of politics in the state of Ohio in subsidy numbers and the effect of various kinds of ways of offering universities that subsidy funding, the troubling kind of movement of assessmentism that's coming out of Washington, D.C. and its effect on regional accreditation, and then the kinds of economic recovery questions and demographic questions we have as we move forward, including the impact of the Ohio Guarantee, a program that was just approved for Ohio University beginning in 2015, where our students will come in and have guaranteed for them a set cost for their 4 years of undergraduate work. We're trying to be as good at communicating as we can be, as transparent as possible, collaborating with the schools in terms of where we move forward, really depending on data and closing the loop. And we want to institute a culture of continual improvement. There are must-haves for RCM, including having a team approach to financial analysis and planning. We need a lot more work in that area now as a college than we would have in the previous budget models, and we now have a team that's helping us beautifully to take care of that. Data collection is really essential for calculating our budget because it helps us to understand what kinds of revenues should be credited to us and to pay attention when they're not. And it helps us also to really minimize the expenses that are expected of us and to get off our books certain expenses that are not rightfully ours to pay. We need to be constantly updating and living by and examining our mission, vision, and value statements as we move forward, and a strategic plan as we begin to assemble it must have accessible and time-bound goals. We're going to have a regular planning process for closing the loop on goals and creation of new goals. And then maybe most importantly, we really want to institute a culture of efficiency, doing as much as we can with the resources that we have. There are several data points that I want to go over quickly with you, and I apologize, I'm recording this in Keynote, and unfortunately the graphs didn't totally transfer as clearly as possible, but I think you'll get the idea. Our headcount, as you can see, was pretty steady in the last few years with our graduate students, but our undergrad headcount has come down in the last 3 years by about 90-95 students. And as you can see later on, this really affects our revenue projections because our undergraduate revenues are calculated on the past 3 years. So as we peel off the higher years and replace them with lower years, our revenues do go down. But that's what happens in the next several years, and it's not the entire future, and it's not the end of the world. Degrees granted, looking pretty good. I think we had a surge of completions before the institution went to semesters, so it'll be interesting to see newer data as we begin to get that. Our first-year retention rates and six-year graduation rates are incredibly important to pay attention to because our retention of students from the first into the second year and our ability to get them graduated all have a very important impact on our revenue calculations. With our fiscal 14 budget summary, I want to quickly go through these categories. You have the handout, which you probably downloaded from the Blackboard site. First of all, we have the subsidy from the state of Ohio, which is our portion from Ohio University, given to us from the whole amount that OU has received this year from the state for subsidizing for majors, for course completions, that sort of thing. And that comes to about $5.7 million. The remainder of our revenue is calculated from our net tuition and educational fees coming in from undergraduate and graduate tuition and fees minus their financial aid, and then various fees that the students pay. And then other revenues such as grants, contracts, gifts, endowment distributions, and various external sales. From this total revenue, we take 12.5% and we give it back into a subvention or strategic pool allocation. And so for us this year, that was approximately $2.2 million. So our total net revenue this year has been $19,087,453. Our expenses really consist of our direct costs, which are our salaries and related expenses, and our supplies, services, capitalized costs, that sort of thing. Those direct costs amount to about $15.8 million. And then added to that are indirect costs, which are the percentage we pay for various services on campus and the taxation we pay on our square footage, which is a very high amount for us because of the large amounts of spaces that we need to do our programs. Those total indirect costs are a little over $8.8 million, making our total net expenses this year $24,712,235. Now, our total subvention this year, in other words, the additional money we receive back from the university to meet our expenses, comes to $5,624,782, which is 22.8% of our expenses. Now, what I'd like you to think about is the fact that part of that is money we already paid into the pool. So I think the portion we need to pay attention to would be the amount beyond what we've contributed to that pool, the amount that the other colleges really need to be giving us so we can meet our expenses. That additional amount above our own contributions amounts to $3,419,741, or 13.8% of our expenses. Now, the trends for next year involve revenue going down, because as we said, our major count is going down, and since we're calculated in arrears, that results in a lower net revenue next year, and a little bit higher expenses for very understandable reasons. Higher salaries, benefits costs go up, and so on. So that means that our subvention amount for next year above our own pool contribution looks to be about $3,677,935, or up a full percentage point of our expenses. Apologize for this graph, but this is a graph of salary percentages. So faculty salaries amount to about 66% of our salary expenses. Our administrative and professional staff members account for about 14% of our salary expenditures. Classified staff amount to about 4%. And our graduate stipends and other student wages are about 16%. So if you think about faculty, graduate student, and student wages altogether, amounts to about 82% of our salary expenditures. So we've talked through the projections for fiscal year 15, and the main message here is that the goal for fiscal year 16, where we're going to be talking in a year's time, is to be reducing this percentage. So we want to be putting in place this coming year immediately the means by which we might reduce our expenses to a certain degree and raise our revenues. So we have some opportunities, and you can see on the screen here various calculations of faculty turnover, which always give us opportunities. So when we look at replacing faculty, we want to be thinking about using the most flexible new faculty members we can find, who can do a variety of things and capable of learning to go in new directions. And we want to be considering what a Group 1 hire would bring us as opposed to a Group 2. There are cases when one or the other is more appropriate for the needs that we have, and we want to carefully consider what each can give us in terms of leadership and in terms of productivity. There's some hypothetical cases here that I've listed, kind of gross revenue estimates, and then in the case of e-learning, where we don't have costs to offset, the money that comes in has already had subtracted from it the expenses associated with that. This gives you sort of an idea of the kinds of revenues that come in for different types of instructional things, bringing in 10 new undergraduate majors, 5 new fee-paying grad students, 50 students in a gen ed course, or 50 students in an e-learning course. So I think you can agree that these are fairly significant numbers. We're rolling out new grants and stipends, and the full information is posted on our Blackboard site. I hope you'll take a little look at it. We're reinstituting the traditional Creative Research Awards. We're able to do this now because we realize late spring that OIT is going to be permanently funding our new instructional technologist position. So funds we had been building up to really be able to support that position can now begin to be used in support of faculty. The traditional Creative Research Awards are available to Group 1 faculty. We're rolling out a new program of Summer Innovation Awards, which are available to any full-time COFA faculty for projects in various categories. This is available to Group 1, Group 2, and Group 4 faculty. And then finally, distance learning and technology stipends for professional development opportunities this summer. And these awards are available not just to faculties in Group 1, 2, and 4, but also to our continuing graduate students. The application deadlines for these initiatives is May 7th, and we've postponed a little bit of the funding for the traditional Creative Research Awards to have a second request for proposal with a deadline at the end of the summer, September 3rd. There'll be some follow-up roundtables. I'll be happy to meet with any of you who have further questions or dialogue and input. I'll be happy to meet with you in the green room behind the recital hall in Glidden at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, April 8th, Wednesday, April 16th, or Monday, April 21st. So I encourage you to bring your questions, and let's move ahead. Thank you very much.